Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows that are of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of American Gods. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, there's the whole Salim and Ifrit situation. Now, a really interesting conversation ended up coming up between them, and it's the whole aspect of because basically Ifrit talks about him and the other jinns were given a choice a long time ago. Either you convert to Islam or you basically walk the earth basically as demons. And he chose to walk the path as a demon because for him, he doesn't really believe in any gods like that. But he stands in front of Salim who believes in one God, Allah. And for him, it's no other God, because, for him, it's there is no other God but Allah. And, because it's written and that's how it is. But then you end up having Ifrit doing the interesting thing of being yeah, you say that. Just because something's said doesn't mean there's not contradictions within it. Because for him, it's Thomas Jefferson said that all men are created equal, yet he had slaves. And it's oof. It's so interesting because it is that thing of Salim is literally surrounded by gods. He's come across gods and he still believes in that one God. And I love that Wednesday takes advantage of it. He's don't let Ifrit shit on your whole situation because Ifrit's basically all other gods are like this dude over here. And he's hey, the fact of the matter is he's monolithic people like you who believe in one God. It's you guys are kind of the bee's knees essentially. Is because all their faith is in one person. That belief is so strong. I guess you can make the argument we saw that with the tech kid and that dude last episode. You could make, you could say that argument. And so that's so interesting to me because, for Wednesday, it's the fact of the matter is you guys share a good chunk of the pie. You guys make up a good chunk of the pie. And it's if you ever decide to kind of go circling out there, kind of start believing other gods, I'm just throwing my name out there in the hat. It's my name's Wednesday. The name's Wednesday. Fun is a game or something like that. And it's I love that he's literally trying to pimp himself out for other people to believe in. It's just such a funny thing. It's interesting considering the fact is it seemed like at the beginning the only person you really cared about believing in you was Shadow. But it's so interesting when you see the parallels between them because obviously Shadow didn't really know what to believe in. It's really hard to say what he exactly believed in. We know Laura at least claimed that she didn't believe in anything. So what did Shadow believe? He didn't know, and now you have Salim. So it's kind of interesting parallels of the man who doesn't know what he believes, and you have Salim, the man who knows what it is that he believes, but it starts making him question everything. Because for Ifrit, it's I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just telling you not to make up the facts in front of you. There are just facts in this world. You're acting like Allah's just the one true God. There are literally a whole bunch of other gods. You're literally standing in front of one, that being Wednesday. But it's you turn a blind eye to the truth as in front of you. And the fact of the matter is, do you still want to go with me even with all of that? And it is just an interesting conversation to have. And I love it when it was all said and done, he was still like that. It's also interesting, too, because there's so much mythology stuff kind of dropped in. Because I don't know that much about Greek mythology or Norse mythology. But some shit was dropped this episode that was so interesting. For example, he went to a dwarf named Alvis, who, interestingly enough, is played by the actor. I'm fairly certain that's the same actor who played Grumpy in Once Upon a Time, which there's another connection to Once Upon a Time. But I'll get to that soon enough. Or another adjacent connection to Once Upon a Time, but nevertheless, I thought that was kind of interesting. He ends up bringing up, it's I bested Sindri or something like that, as a dwarf who can make incredible stuff. And I was holy crap, pulls from my God of War knowledge. I'm whoa, Sindri, because Sindri's one of the dwarves. Him and his brother Brock helped Kratos and Atreus during, the most recent God of War PS4, as we'll kind of call it, or God of War 2018, whatever the case may be, you want to refer to it as. And so I heard that name Sindri, I was oh, I don't know Norse mythology, but I know that name because of God of War. I thought that was so interesting. And obviously, because apparently he's the one that helped make Alvis, made Mjolnir. And there was a ring he made too that I thought was kind of interesting. Obviously we know what Mjolnir is, but I don't know what the ring is that he was referencing. Like I said, I'm not that well versed in mythology. But I love, it's oh yeah, Odin's bringing Gungnir to him to make, but apparently the runes on it are going along with the 18 charms that are connected to Wednesday and stuff like that. Apparently the only person who can do it is some other guy. So it's just so interesting. That whole situation. Cause we also learned about Ifrit too, because like Salim was kind of like, oh, so Ifrit's Wednesday is a god that you follow and believe in. He's like, no, I don't follow and believe anyone. The fact of the matter is that asshole Wednesday literally had me stuck in a talisman around his neck or whatever, and it's only until he found like, oh, I need you, so he released me. So it's not like I'm serving him because I want to, it's just basically because I kind of owe him, so much like pretty much everyone in Wednesday's life, it's like he keeps people around him who have no choice but to work for him because they need him, in the sense of like they owe him. It's what I meant to say. I don't ignore what I just said. They owe him, so they have to serve him. Another interesting thing went down. Is like, I love that Laura found Mads, and they went to see, interestingly enough, Dr. Samdi from like, it's the same character, but obviously it's different iterations. But obviously this character also popped up in Once Upon a Time, the final season. But obviously, like, the story he's pulled from is the Princess and the Frog, like the Disney movie, is the only version of this character aside from Once Upon a Time, which still kind of falls in the category of Disney adaptation. But that's where I know that character from. I was like, that's so interesting. I didn't know there was like mythology to that. There probably is like some old because I know he's connected to voodoo and stuff like that, so I didn't know like he was like a real mythological character. I thought he was just something made up for that. But it's like, I mean, I don't know. I don't because it's like apparently like him and Brigitte are like Death Loa, so which is interesting because obviously like Marvel's Cloak and Dagger kind of like goes down in that lane too. So I guess like it's kind of like a folklore type of mythology type of thing, which I had no idea his character was that. Well, also interesting because I mentioned Marvel. The actor who plays him is the actor who played Bushmaster in season 2 of Luke Cage. I was like, because I kept looking like, why do I recognize him? And I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. So now that was interesting. Like, the fact is, everything they're doing to help Laura. I even love that Mads was kind of like, no, you're not doing it for her, you're doing it for me, because like the whole thing is like Laura cheats. It's like not only did she cheat Dev, she also cheated her husband and everything. But they did everything to kind of help her like breathe and kind of feel and be able to taste food again. But they're in the process of helping her, and Samdi trades in truths. And it turns out there's a lot of interesting things, because obviously, like, she's kind of built herself up to be like everything important in her life kind of revolved around Shadow. Because obviously she's like, I admit, I kind of fucked things up with me and Shadow. And he's like, oh, truth be told is like, you messed things up from the very beginning. But even before you got married, because you lied and told him you loved him when you didn't. So there's also the question of like, oh, what are you going to do when you actually get your skin back, your flesh fully back and stuff like that? Then they start doing their thing, Brigitte and Mads do their thing, until it clicks and it's like, oh, it's Laura and Mads doing their thing. I was like, oh snap. I was like, yo, freaking Mads and Laura? Didn't see that coming. Because it's interesting, because like the last ingredient she needs is blood mixed with love. She needs 2 drops. So I'm curious, because she can't get that from Shadow, because it's just, I think it's just does it have to be like a reciprocal thing of like they both have to love each other, or does it have to be that one person? Because I don't know if Shadow outright loves Laura anymore, just because everything's super complicated about that. Plus, she's not the same woman that he loved at one point in time, So I was literally about to say Once Upon a Time. It would still been apt, but it was just funny. Nevertheless, it was just kind of interesting, and you could tell like Laura was upset by like Mads. Like, this is awkward moment between them, because I think it did happen. Even they're Death Loas and stuff like that, but it's like I think they kind of made that happen. So that was actually Mads and Laura together. Maybe they weren't actually together. Maybe that was just a thing of like messing with their heads, because you can tell it kind of when she's like, oh, you actually have a thing for the dead girl. It's like when you actually look at the way Mads kind of looks at her, sometimes you're like. And the fact of the matter is, you can make the argument he's just making up this excuse about the coin and everything just because he wants an excuse to keep following her and everything. So, I wonder, does this have any... Because I'll talk about it in a second. The whole, like, Essie situation, as well as the woman in the past that's connected to the Froggy situation, we're definitely going to talk about that. But, like, I don't know, it's just interesting. And, like, just those women constantly popping up, and the fact that, like, there's got to be a reason why they look like Laura. That can't just be coincidence, because it's like you could get any actress to play that role, but you specifically keep getting Emily Browning to do it. So that's why I'm like, there's got to be something to that. So, but Laura starts thinking, like, well, the fact of the matter is you're Wednesday's errand boy, so whether it was just screwing up my plan and getting Shadow in jail and obviously killing me, and then, like, even you having sex with being with me, it's like, oh, so you're whoring yourself out for Wednesday. But then Mads is like, no, whatever the hell this thing is, that has nothing to do with Wednesday. Because the fact of the matter is, I don't like him. I literally hate him more than you can know. And the fact is, the only reason why I'm serving him is because I owe him. And Laura's like, the only reason why you're doing all this, you're serving him because you're too much of a coward to find your own war to die in. I mean, let's not forget, like, he originally ran from the battle that he was supposed to die in, and I think when the time comes, he's going to find a war to die in that's on his own, and I think it's going to be connected to Laura, not Wednesday. Like, he's going to still be in this whole situation with Wednesday, but I think when the time comes for him to die, I think it's going to be for Laura's sake. That's going to be the war that he's going to decide to fight, maybe, and maybe that means putting him at odds with not just the new gods, but even, like, old gods, like Wednesday, because I think there might be a third faction that pops up besides the new gods. It could be a side maybe potentially led by Shadow that's challenging all the gods of, like, yeah, we're tired of you kind of screwing with our lives, so we're fighting back type of thing. Maybe not, because a lot of people are kind of under Wednesday's thumb because he's just a slimy trickster, so we'll have to wait and see on that in that regard, but I'm interested to see what Laura ends up doing. Is she going to go try and track down Shadow? I mean, to be fair, he's around Wednesday, and that's a whole complicated thing, because I'm sure Wednesday's going to be like, oh yeah, you killing Argus to get your coin back and everything. Like, that might still kind of get thrown in her face, so she might be reluctant to go that way. I don't know. Oh yeah, right, I forgot. I literally kept thinking, I was like, there was something else connected to God of War that I went to reference to. We ended up, like, Wednesday was like, oh yeah, that bike that, you know, it's like, oh, she follows them around or whatever. Apparently that bike is Freya's boar, which is interesting because Freya has a boar in God of War. I'm sure there's, like, obviously deep mythology to it, but it's just kind of interesting because I'm like, oh yeah, there's the boar she has in God of War. But apparently it's also her lover, which is interesting. I mean, to be fair, when you know, like, everything connected to her, Zeus, is kind of like, yeah, you might, you know, it's a whole thing. I mean, we obviously know, even in the confines of this, like, stories that we've seen so far of, like, oh yeah, goddesses having other lovers don't always end well, or at least other people, it's a complicated mess with jealous gods and stuff like that. This show isn't the only show that's ever referenced that. Other things have too, but, you know, gods can be assholes when it comes to, like, when they think what's theirs, essentially, and if it's someone in particular, their significant others kind of step out of that line, they try to punish them and shit like that. Just dick moves, that's all I'm saying. But nevertheless, the other side of things is that whole freaking Froggy, it's William James. That's the most fucked up opening ever I've ever seen to anything. Holy shit. I mean, you know, the sad and fucked up part is there's probably many instances in the past. It doesn't make it any better, but Jesus, that was the most fucked up, brutal thing. I'm like, God. And every time, like, Shadow seeing him and stuff like that, and it's just like, apparently any black men that die in Carol appear like that, no matter what the circumstances are, because basically they're all cursed by William, and it's like, well, why did he curse all of them? Because for him, it's like, I guess, it's a hatred turned inward, because he's looking at all the people that he felt like betrayed him. It's not just the people that were hateful of him, but it's also the people he feels like are there not doing anything, that just kind of left him on his own. But that's what I was also talking about. Like, the lady he walked past looked like Laura, and then in an instant, like, for a second, you saw Shadow become William as he walked past that lady, and it's like, Jesus, what is that supposed to mean? There has to be some significance to that. Like, I keep bringing up, the fact of the matter is, and it's just interesting because it's like, oh, there's Shadow in that moment. I guess that's him implanting himself in a story, or I don't know what that is, but once again, it's like another person that looks like Laura, because we know that Essie, she looked like Laura and she had a connection to Mads. So it's like there's something there. Maybe it's almost kind of like it's bound to happen between them, that they're always going to be connected, all three of them, like that, kind of in a weird, crazy love triangle situation, if you want to call it that. I'm kind of looking at it like that now, knowing how Mads potentially feels about Laura. It's a whole can of worms, dude. But it was so interesting because while this is happening, you know, Nancy shows up and brings up some interesting stuff to Ibis, because for him, he says something interesting of like, the fact of the matter is, if I were you and I had the business of dead bodies, I'd be loving war, because war would mean business is good. You and Jaquel sit, which I'm assuming that's Anubis's like name, just like Ibis's is his, and like Anansi's name is just Nancy, so I'm sure it's kind of like that same thing. But because we did see in season 1 he does turn himself into the dog. So, but it's like you guys sit between good and evil, yet essentially you don't do anything for William James. And he's like, oh, do you think we owe this town or something like that? It was just kind of an interesting conversation, because he's basically like, oh, it's just kind of interesting. The fact is that you don't want to take part in this war. It's because you already have a back supply, some other backdoor access to other ways of, you know, getting bodies. And he's thinking it's like all the black men that die in Cairo, like you're taking advantage of that, and it's like you're taking away my worshipers, and that cannot be. And it's like, so, but then it's interesting because then later on they're drinking together, so maybe Nancy was kind of like, oh, maybe it's just me, maybe he's kind of got an eye on Mr. Ibis, but he's kind of leaving it at that. I have no idea. I also love that later on he got pissed because Mr. Ibis was like, oh, that thing about this country's the only country that weighs food in feet or something like that, and the cat ran away, and Nancy was pissed off. He's like, well, damn it, there goes my night. Because they make a joke later on, like, oh, the cat got his tongue, and it's like, oh, it got more than his tongue. Ha 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 ha. Because I almost let it slip my mind. I was like, what the hell is this whole cat thing about? I was like, right, the cat's... wasn't that the conversation the previous episode? Like, that's Mr. Ibis' sister, that whole situation, which that's just, that whole conversation and laughing, like, I mean, it is what it is. Gods in their whole situations. But also at the same time, there's the whole conversation between Ruby and her, the Reverend, because for him it's like, no, stay in Cairo because she wants to leave, and Bilquis is like, oh, I'll stay as long as you want to stay. But then it comes to a whole conversation where even the priest, the Reverend was kind of like, yeah, I've lied to you. Every time I told you that things would be okay, I did. Because for Ruby, it's like she's lost people important to her, and she can't stay in Cairo because for her, it's not home, it's hell for her. And even the Reverend at the end being like, you go out there and find some place, and you know, you find that place, you call me and I'll come running, basically. And then like the whole thing about, it's interesting because it's like William ends up killing people he believes have no hope. It's basically his way of giving them peace, because everything that's kind of in Cairo seems, you know, cursed and everything. And so, but Shadow was kind of like, the fact is there's always hope. And so for him, he wanted Shadow to spread his message, and he did. And it comes down to a conversation like, well, what's William's whole situation? What was that all about? And it's like, maybe he wanted people to understand and know his pain and kind of spread that, because like I said, it's all about like inward hate and stuff like that. I will be 100% honest with you. I'm not 100% sure what that whole William James situation is supposed to represent. I do know that it led to like Nancy and Ibis and Wednesday all cracking jokes and stuff like that, and just pissing, you know, Shadow off, because for him it's just more and furthermore non-answers and stuff like that. They know more than him, and he just kind of left pissing in the wind, I guess, because it's like magic isn't real. It's a trick or something like that. Nancy was kind of getting at. I don't know. It was all interesting story element. But I'm also curious, like, you know, what's up with Ruby and Bilquis? Like, what's that going to turn to? Where will they go? I mean, obviously, Bilquis has claimed that she's chosen a side. But like I said, it's so interesting because, like, you got these humans kicking it. I mean, obviously, you have Laura in her situation. But, like, you got Ruby with Bilquis. You got Salim with Ifrit, which kind of puts him on Wednesday's side, but he doesn't want to worship or put faith in Wednesday. He sees Wednesday, he knows Wednesday, but he doesn't put faith in Wednesday like he does Allah. And you have Shadow kind of bound by Wednesday. So a lot of interesting stuff went down in this episode, to say the very least, you know? I'm very interested to see where the next episode is going to take us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.